The imperial court of the Tang dynasty was a stage of intrigue and betrayal, where few managed to hold on to power for long. The Chinese throne, one of the most coveted in the world, was constantly threatened by ambitious rivals, treacherous advisors, and silent conspiracies that could topple an emperor overnight in this dangerous and unforgiving setting. One woman did the unthinkable. She not only survived, but rose to the top of the empire and secured her position as the only reigning empress in China's long and storied history. Her name was Wu Zetian. Raised in a society that strictly forbade women from holding positions of political power, she used her intelligence, cunning, and an unprecedented level of political skill to overcome her adversaries and become China's absolute ruler. Her rise defied all social expectations and norms of the time. But how is it possible for a woman, in such a hostile and patriarchal environment, to outmaneuver her rivals and reign over an empire that had never before accepted a female sovereign? What strategies did she employ to reshape her own destiny and forge a legacy that would endure for centuries? In this video, we will dive deep into the extraordinary story of Wu Zetian and uncover the secrets behind her rise to power. Prepare yourself for a journey through one of the most fascinating chapters of Chinese history, a tale filled with betrayal, political assassinations, and plot twists worthy of an epic novel. After all, to survive the Tang court, ambition alone was not enough. You had to be absolutely ruthless, adaptable, and ahead of everyone else. To fully understand how Wu Zetian rose to power, it is essential to first grasp the nature of the battlefield she entered, the imperial court of the Tang dynasty. Far from the romanticized image of a peaceful golden palace, the Forbidden City was, in reality, a brutal political war zone. Ministers, generals, concubines, aristocrats, and eunuchs all competed fiercely for influence over the emperor. It was a world where loyalty was rare, betrayal was common, and survival required constant vigilance. The political structure of Tang China was immensely complex. While the emperor was the nominal head of state, his authority was often contested by powerful aristocratic families who wielded considerable influence. At the same time, eunuchs working behind the scenes played their own dangerous political games, often acting as intermediaries between the emperor and the outside world. Confucian scholars, deeply entrenched in the ideology of male supremacy and tradition, resisted any attempt to upset the existing order. Wu Zetian entered this world not just as a woman, but as a concubine without the backing of a noble family. This made her vulnerable and politically expendable. However, it also made her unpredictable and underestimated by her rivals. She quickly realized that in order to survive, she needed to master the intricacies of political manipulation. She forged alliances to her advantage, played rival factions against each other, and above all, removed any obstacle that stood in her way. Let us now examine how Wu Zetian began her journey. From a seemingly insignificant position in the palace to a place at the emperor's side, and eventually to the throne itself. Wu Zetian began her career in the imperial court as a concubine to Emperor Taizong. In the hierarchy of the imperial harem, she was just one of many women competing for the emperor's attention. But unlike others who sought comfort in luxury or quietly faded into the background, Wu stood out for her intelligence, literacy, and exceptional political insight. She used these qualities to earn the attention and favor of those in power. When Emperor Taizong died, the tradition dictated that concubines without children were to be sent to Buddhist convents, where they would live out their days in quiet obscurity. Wu was no exception and was duly sent to a convent. However, she refused to accept this fate. In a move that shocked many, she managed to return to court under the new Emperor Gaozong, who had known her during his father's reign. She quickly became his favorite, a remarkable comeback by any standard. But Wu Zetian did not stop there. Her goal was not to serve, it was to rule. Wu understood that in order to solidify her position, she needed to eliminate her competitors. According to historical accounts, Empress Wang and consort Zhao, Wu's primary rivals, fell victim to an elaborate trap. One version of the story claims that Wu sacrificed her own newborn daughter and framed Empress Wang for the child's death. Whether this version is factual or legend, the result was the same. Both women were disgraced and removed from court. Wu Zetian was installed as the new empress consort. With this title, Wu Zetian was now a single step away from ruling the empire. However, even as Empress Consort, her powers were still limited. To truly govern, she needed to undermine her husband's authority and take control of the imperial administration. The next chapters in her journey show how she did just that, turning the mighty Tang dynasty into her own personal empire. Even after becoming Empress Consort, Wu Zetian understood that her position was still precarious. The court was filled with enemies and dissenters who would not hesitate to bring her down if she made a mistake. To establish herself as a true power within the empire, she needed to act with patience, precision, and cold calculation. Her first major initiative was to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to her growing influence. She created a vast network of informants, spies, and loyal officials who monitored the activities of court members and reported back to her. Ministers who opposed her or were seen as too loyal to the previous empress were accused of corruption or treason and were either exiled or executed. Over time, as Emperor Gozong's health began to deteriorate, he relied increasingly on Wu Zetian to make important political decisions. Eventually, he became a figurehead, while she effectively ruled in his place. But Wu Zetian did not rely solely on fear and repression to build her power. She was also a master of strategic alliance building. Like the traditional aristocrats who inherited their power, Wu promoted talented officials from lower social backgrounds. These individuals owed their success to her, and in return offered unwavering loyalty. This policy alienated the old nobility, but it created a new bureaucratic class that was completely devoted to Wu Zetian. When Emperor Gaozong died, Wu Zetian was in a position of unrivaled power. However, she did not immediately seize the throne for herself. Instead, she ruled behind the scenes by installing her sons as puppet emperors, ensuring that real power remained in her hands. Over the years, she removed any remaining opposition with surgical precision. Then, in the year 690, she finally made her boldest move. She declared herself Empress of China, founding a new dynasty, the Zhou dynasty, and officially becoming the first and only woman to rule China in her own name. Upon taking the throne, Wu Zetian faced fierce opposition. Her ascension directly challenged the Confucian ideals that had long shaped Chinese society. According to these ideals, women were expected to be obedient, submissive, and confined to domestic roles. A woman assuming the highest position in the land was considered not only scandalous, but an existential threat to the moral fabric of the empire. Nobles, military commanders, and Confucian scholars all conspired to remove her. In response, Wu Zetian expanded her espionage network to root out dissent. Her secret police operated throughout the capital and provinces, investigating plots and neutralizing threats before they could gain momentum. Public executions of conspirators served as a warning to others, creating a climate of fear that, while brutal, kept the empire under control. Despite this repression, Wu Zetian also implemented a number of progressive reforms. She expanded the imperial examination system, allowing candidates from a broader social spectrum to serve in government. This not only increased the quality of officials, but also weakened the monopoly of the aristocracy. She also invested in agricultural development, supported irrigation projects, and reduced taxes on peasants. These reforms improved the economy and brought greater stability to the lives of ordinary citizens. Another cornerstone of her rule was her support for Buddhism. Unlike Confucianism, which resisted female authority, Buddhism offered a more inclusive philosophical framework. Wu Zetian took full advantage of this. She funded the construction of temples, commissioned sacred texts, and encouraged Buddhist scholars to promote her reign as divinely sanctioned. Now, this alliance with Buddhism helped her gain moral legitimacy and popular support. Still, her reign was constantly under threat. Internal tensions, court rivalries, and the ever-present resentment from the nobility kept Wu Zetian on high alert. She remained a master of court intrigue, continually adapting to new threats, removing traitors, and reshaping the political landscape to suit her needs. Eventually, the pressures of leadership began to take their toll. Wu Zetian, now advanced in age, began facing resistance not only from outside her family, but from within. Members of the imperial family, particularly her sons, began plotting to remove her from power. As her health declined, she was eventually forced to abdicate. Her son, Emperor Zhongzong, was restored to the throne with the support of loyalists, who had grown weary of her rule. Although Wu Zetian was removed from power, her influence continued to shape the court. Even in retirement, she remained an iconic and controversial figure. She died at the age of 81, having secured her family's continued presence on the throne and left an enduring mark on Chinese history. Wu Zetian's reign was unprecedented. She rose from a low-ranking concubine to the most powerful person in China. Her story is one of brilliance, courage, and an unrelenting will to break through barriers that had held back women for centuries. She defied societal expectations, changed the rules of power, and rewrote the narrative of what leadership could look like. Her legacy is complex and continues to spark debate. To many, Wu Zetian was a pioneering woman who overcame enormous obstacles to govern wisely and effectively. She is remembered as a ruler who rewarded merit, uplifted the underprivileged, and left China stronger than she found it. To others, she remains a symbol of tyranny, a woman who manipulated, schemed, and destroyed anyone in her way. How she is viewed often depends on who tells her story. Some see her as a trailblazer for women's rights, a symbol of empowerment in a deeply patriarchal world. Others regard her as a cautionary tale about the corrupting nature of absolute power. Yet it is this duality, this complex blend of heroism and ruthlessness, that makes Wu Zetian one of the most captivating figures in world history. Over the centuries, Wu Zetian has been the subject of countless works of literature, film, television, and historical study. She has been portrayed alternately as a ruthless villain and as a wise and just leader. In modern times, she has become an icon for those challenging gender norms and advocating for women's participation in leadership. Her life story continues to inspire, provoke, and invite reflection on the nature of power, gender, and ambition. Today, Wu Zetian remains an ambiguous figure. To some, a brilliant and daring empress. To others, a cruel tyrant. Regardless of one's view, her legacy endures. Her journey from concubine to empress proves that even in the most rigid of systems, it is possible to change the course of history through determination, intellect, and an unyielding will to rule. Wu Zetian's rise and reign will continue to be studied, debated, and admired for generations to come.